All right, guys, we're going to be going over page 149. So we have this coordinate plane here, and we're going to label the coordinates. But I always like to just remind myself of where the x and the y go. This is the x-axis here, and this is the y-axis, so I don't forget. And this spot here is called the origin. And I need to remember that x comes before y, all my coordinate pairs. I can think of that because x comes before, I can remember that because x becomes before y in the alphabet. M is at 3 on the x and 4 on the y. N is at 1 on the x and 1 on the y. O, 5 on the x, 2 on the y. P, 2 on the x and 3 on the y. Order is important because if we didn't write them in this way, then we would likely not have correctly graphed those. Solve and use fraction pieces to help you if needed. You're going to notice that we need to look at our denominator first. Well, those are not common, or they're not the same, so we need to find a common denominator. I'm going to list the multiples of 5 and 10. I stopped pretty soon because I realized that my common denominator is 10. So I do not need to change 3/10, but I do need to change 1/5 to a equivalent fraction. 5 times what is 10? Well, it's 5 times 2 is 10. What I do to the denominator, I do to the numerator. So the equivalent fraction for 1/5 is 2/10. So where I see 1/5, I'm going to write 2/10 plus 3/10 equals 5/10. I'm going to just circle that because it's kind of hard to see since I did my work right there too. All right, next one, I'm going to look at my next fractions. It's another addition problem. Unlike denominators, but I love it because we just found a common denominator for 5 and 10, which is 10. And I already found my equivalent fraction for 1/5. I know 1/5 and 2/10 are equivalent to each other. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. And now I can solve. Remember, your denominator stays the same, and you add or subtract your numerator as needed. And here I'm adding, so my answer is 3/10. My next one is 2/3 plus 1/6. My denominators are not the same, so I need to list the multiples of each denominator. I have 3 and 6. Wow, I didn't have to go very far because the common denominator is 6. 1/6 will remain the same, but 2/3 needs to change. 2/3 times some sort of fraction gives me a denominator of 6. I know that 3 multiplied by 2 is 6. What I do to the denominator, I do to the numerator. 4/6 plus 1/6. That's my substitution there. 1 plus 4 is 5/6. Write a multiplication problem for your estimate below. So my estimate is 300 multiplied by 70 equals 21,000. So I just need to find something that's going to be close to 300. So that could be something in the 200s or something in the, my goodness gracious, something in the high 200s or the low 300s, and then the 70 could be something in the 60s or something in the low 80s. So I'm going to go with 293 multiplied by 68. Now our task is to solve here. I would love to see different equations that are not the same as mine because we should be able to do this one by ourselves. But if you're stuck, you can use mine. And we're going to multiply. Remember, we're going to take the ones place, multiply it by the ones place. Our biggest mistake is not regrouping when we're on the first row. So I have 72 plus that 4. I cross off as I go. 8 times 2 is 16 plus 7 is 23. This 6 is in the tens place, so I need a placeholder. Now I'm going to take the tens, multiply by the ones, and then all the way through. And never forgetting to regroup. And then adding up. I got 19,924, which is really close to 21,000. In this next set on problem 4, we're rounding to the nearest hundredth. So I always like to call out the hundredths place by underlining or highlighting before I even move on, so I don't forget what I'm going to change. Unless you have a 9, the numbers in the front will not change. So this 6 in the hundredths place, I'm going to look behind it. That is 7, which is 5 or more, so we're going to let it soar. If it's more than 5, you go up. So that 6 becomes a 7, and the rest of those digits stay the same. So I know that 67 and 467 hundred or thousandths is close to 67 and 47 hundredths. We're going to keep on going. I have a 1 here. Behind it is a 7. Once again, that's 5 or more. So we're going to let it soar. And soar just means change to the next digit. I have an 8 here. Behind the 8 is a 4. That is 4 or less. Let it rest. By resting, we just stay the same. And then I have a 0 here. Behind the 0 is a 7. So that 7 will change or make the 0 change to a 1. And our last one, I have a 5. Behind the 5 is an 8. And I'm noticing as I'm checking your work, we're not doing the written responses. So thinking about your strategy that we just did on number 4, that will help you write your response for number 5. But explain your strategy for rounding a decimal to the nearest hundredth in problem 4. So really think about that there.